The other point that I wanted to make about just the UFL in general. So we know it was XFL and USFL. Last year they merged. Now you have the XFL has a division, the USFL has a division. They're the UFL. Second year of the UFL. Did you guys know there's already a labor dispute going on?
Doesn't shock me.
No, I did not know that.
So I'm researching, just trying to find stuff on the UFL, trying to get this stuff, and all now that I can find is that apparently they have already filed 10 complaints with the National Labor Bureau, I believe, about working conditions and stuff like that. They're trying to put together a CBA in order to gain either more salary or full year-round health care because they don't have year-round health care.
Wow.
And they were trying to, I guess, write a letter that they were going to give to The Rock because he was supposed to be at the opening game on Friday. But yep, there you go, Kenny. Way to support. But apparently there was some issue with his flight, and he didn't show up for the game, so they couldn't hand deliver him a letter, which I thought was the stupidest thing in the world. How long does the UFL last? You have very, very low attendance anywhere except for really St. Louis. Like, let's be honest. Other than what St. Louis had last year, attendance was minimal. You had a couple games that were higher. You know, Detroit had usually a decent attendance, but not the 30 plus thousand that St. Louis had. Can this league really go much further?
So I feel like they're on borrowed time. St. Louis averages about 34,000 fans. The next closest is San Antonio with 14.4.
Yeah.
There's a couple that are down in about the 5,000-6,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not, most sports leagues, most sports teams make their money from game day revenue. If you're not making that from an individual team standpoint, you're not going to be around for very long.
Well, I
So,
think it's
borrowed
unfortunate
time.
because Jess said something when I was watching the game the other day. I think it was yesterday's game. She's like, "There's just not a lot of people there." I'm like, "Yeah, the problem is there's no draw. Like, football will have fans no matter what. Arena football had fans no matter what because it had uh, an essence to it that was different than anything else. You know, it was like watching hockey with guys in bigger pads and they were throwing the ball instead of hitting it with a stick. It was a completely different thing. So it drew the fans to that game. All that this is a duplication of the NFL, and there's no players to market behind it. You know, the UFL can't come out and say, well, I've got these players that are going to be, I have a Patrick Mahomes. Because all these guys, when they're good, they're going to go to the NFL. So I find it difficult for them to be able to market it to be a big time draw, and they're in cities that,
Yes.
other than St. Louis, don't really care.
Or they're also in NFL cities.
That
They're in
too, yeah.
DC. They're in Arlington.
Right.
You can't play in NFL cities and expect to put up numbers. And to the point to the like arena football, they're putting up the same attendance as arena football. It's just
In
arena.
smaller stadiums. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
So if I was Dwayne the Rock Johnson, I would do two things. I would move a couple franchises. So
Oh, yeah.
we can kind of come back to that. But the first thing I would do is these guys all live in San Antonio. They all they train in San Antonio. So the Battlehawks don't have an office in St. Louis.
Right.
So somebody like a Hakeem Butler or even a Manny Wilkins isn't going on 101 or showing up at the Rizzuto show or doing things that are increasing the popularity of the game. Not necessarily needed here, but in those other markets, right? Because they don't live there. They don't know it. They it doesn't even seem like they're connected with any of the fans. Like outside of DC and the Beer Snake, like does anybody in DC care? That's a great question. I think
Yeah.
so. If I was The Rock and I'm looking at it because they're talking about expansion, like adding two more teams, you have to go to markets that the NFL has spurred. If I'm The Rock, I'm putting a team in San Diego and I'm putting a team in Oakland,
Yep.
Hmm.
and you have to look at markets like that. Now, I'm not saying you go to Iowa City or put another team in like a Birmingham, Alabama, where they already have, and put a team in Jackson, Mississippi. No, but look at those like the top 30 cities. I'd really look at like 25 to 50, right? You're still going to have a big population of people that are going to go do things, right? Like It's cheap to go to a Battlehawks game. We were looking at tickets. I could take Brody for under $50, and that's great for fans because the NFL is outrageous.
Yeah.
So,
Well, the other thing about it too is they really don't have any West Coast time zone teams or Mountain time zone teams. They're cutting off an entire part of the country where they could have fans at. So Oakland and San Diego make sense just from that perspective alone. If
correct.
you take out the NFL part, and then they have one team right on the East Coast, which is DC, which is in a NFL market. So it doesn't make sense how they set it up and why they set it up this way to begin with. They set it up to fail.
I would seriously consider. Okay, so San Antonio I'd keep because it is a unique market, right?
Yes.
Only the Spurs are there,
and they also have the second best attendance in the league.
Yeah. So I would look for cities that right now currently have one or two Big Four teams, right? Like I'd probably go to Salt Lake.
Yes.
And I'm not insulting MLS, but they're not the Big Four, right? So you'd consider something.
City.
What?
Oklahoma City.
Bingo.
That'd be a huge one.
Right?
Yeah.
Like these expanding populations too. And I don't know where those cities are at without really like sitting down and looking at a map, but like those three popped up top of mind. San Diego, Oakland, Salt Lake.
Salt Lake is in Utah, if you didn't know where they were at.